When I was a kid, we'd always go to the Los Angeles Temple to do baptisms for the dead. Amazing place. And we'd always go home by way of In-N-Out Burger or Tommy's and get a burger and fries. And it was the perfect ending of a perfect kind of day. Well, on one of those trips, we swung into a gas station and to grab some snacks or some treats or some candy or something. And I remember buying a pack of candy cigarettes. You remember those? I don't know. I'm pretty sure they don't make them anymore because they shouldn't be making cigarettes, period, anymore. The world has caught up to the word of wisdom and figured out that's really bad for you. But it's just candy. It's gum. And the coolest thing about it is it had like powdered sugar at the end. So if you kind of blew through the gum wrapper, then powdered sugar would smoke out on the other side. Amazing. So true to life. And I'd never seen them. I'd seen them, but I'd never had one before. I'd never tried it. And I thought it'd be kind of fun. And I remember buying one on the way home from the temple of all places. I was a deacon. Cut me some slack. And I bought this thing. And I remember pulling out the first one and putting it to my mouth and feeling so wrong. Technically, there's nothing wrong with this. It's just gum and powdered sugar. But man, inside, hopefully I still had a little of the spirit from the temple. And I just felt this is wrong, even though there's nothing technically wrong about it. And a verse of scripture came to mind that thankfully had been planted there at some point. I remembered it wrong. I remembered it saying, avoid the appearance of evil, where the full phrase from Paul is abstain from all appearance of evil. Abstain, avoid, close enough. I knew there was some verse of scripture about the appearance of evil. Now, is that appearance like, careful, evil appears on the scene and I've got to get out of that? Well, that's good advice as well. Or is it appearance, not that evil is appearing, but I'm appearing evil? And that's to be avoided as well. At least that's how I took it as a deacon. And I remember throwing the pack of gum cigarettes away and kind of shuddering. I'm glad I avoided that. To me, there's something powerful about that principle. And one of the things I was interested this time around studying the first official declaration is there seems to be some hints that Wilford Woodruff was trying to avoid the appearance of evil as well. To be way too brief on the history of anti-polygamy legislation, the U.S. government had been passing law after law after law to kind of tighten the screws on the Latter-day Saints to try to force them out of this belief in plural marriage. They had given women the right to vote, assuming that women in Utah were only being held in plural marriages against their will. So if we give them the right to vote, they'll vote for freedom. They'll vote to end this thing. And boy, did that backfire on the U.S. Congress because the women voted to keep it because they had a testimony of it as strong as the men's. So, that didn't work. Well, let's make plural marriage illegal. There was some wrestling on that over the First Amendment to the Constitution. And what about free exercise of religion? Well, the U.S. Supreme Court at the time said, well, we're not going to legislate against religious belief, but we can legislate against religious behavior. Well, historians would say, easy for an all-Protestant Supreme Court to say, since Protestantism talks about belief far more than behavior. Had there been Catholics on the court, they may have differed in opinion. Anyway, they keep getting stronger and stronger. Eventually, it basically seems like the church is going to be disincorporated. Saints themselves will be disenfranchised. You cannot vote. And we're going to take the temples from you. We'll take everything the church owns. The church had run test cases. This would be odd. Like you ask somebody, anyone here willing to go to be found guilty with these anti-polygamy laws and then take it all the way to the Supreme Court? We really hope that you are pronounced innocent, but we have to test the case. And that didn't work for the saints because the poor George Reynolds was found guilty and sent to prison. So by this point, Congress has weighed in on it. The executive branch has weighed in on it. The judicial branch has weighed in on it. And it's 3 strikes and the Latter-day Saints are out. There's no way you're going to be able to hold on to polygamy and the temple at the same time. Something's got to give. In fact, for me, that's one of my favorite things about what finally one of the straws that broke the camel's back. What hills will we die on? Temple. Okay? What does this have to do with candy cigarettes? Well, look at the phrases in the paragraphs that begin this official declaration. This is Wilford Woodruff just explaining to people why he's ending polygamy. Okay? The practice has come to its conclusion. We're not doing this anymore, but notice what he says. If you work your way down and count them by paragraphs, this is the fourth paragraph. And he says, inasmuch as laws have been enacted by Congress forbidding plural marriages, which laws have been pronounced constitutional by the court of last resort. And again, they'd gone that far. They took it all the way up through all these different courts of appeals, went to the Supreme Court itself, and now there's no further resort. We've gone as far as we possibly can with the law of the land. Notice it's Congress, there's the legislative branch, the court of last resort, there's the judicial branch, and notice nothing's worked. And since these laws, which we didn't agree with, remember what we saw in section 134 about laws and governments and so on. If government says no, and then if Congress says no, and then the Supreme Court says no, there's nothing else we can do and still be citizens of this country. Will we try things in Canada? Will we try things in Mexico? But to be good citizens, 12th article of faith, then what do? Here's his answer. I hereby declare my intention to submit to those laws and to use my influence with the members of the church over which I preside to have them do likewise. Here's Wilford Woodruff honoring the constitutional process. This is a prophet honoring a president and a Congress and a judiciary. I will honor and obey and sustain the law because I've tried to go through legal channels to push back against it as much as I possibly can. I've tried to be a good citizen and a good saint. And now there's nothing more we can do. In some ways, I wonder if section 124 is in the back of anyone's mind as this idea of you tried to establish Zion in Missouri and you were stopped. Outside of your control, I will accept the will for the deed and not hold you responsible. Is something similar happening here? Again, there is so much history behind the end of this we don't have time to get into. But at this point, suffice it to say, Wilford Woodruff isn't teaching it. He intends to submit to it. He's going to use his influence to lead other members in doing likewise. And then notice what he says, if you go back a paragraph. Paragraph 3, he says, one case has been reported in which the parties allege that the marriage was performed in the Endowment House in Salt Lake City in the spring of 1889, but I have not been able to learn who performed the ceremony. Whatever was done in this matter was without my knowledge. So this is just a reported case. It's an alleged instance when a marriage was performed, and it's late in the game. It's 1889. But again, the saints have been submitting little by little throughout much of this process. And notice what he says at the end. In consequence of this alleged occurrence. So we don't even know if this actually happened. It was one case. It was only reported. It was only alleged. But because of this alleged occurrence, the Endowment House was, by my instruction, taken down without delay. That's amazing. Talk about avoiding even the appearance of what someone else considers evil. I'm going to honor your concerns about this. In the book of Romans, Paul really wrestles with this about what can we eat and what will we do? And it's not sin necessarily, but if someone else thinks it is, will I honor their sensitivity and be sensitive to that sensitivity? I know that I'm not doing anything wrong. And they could have stuck to their guns and done exactly that. But to honor others, to be good fellow citizens, that's going to be part of our sainthood too. So if they say it happened in the Endowment House, which is kind of a temporary temple as they were still working on the Salt Lake Temple, then it has to go. Because if that's where plural marriages are going to be performed and the government's concerned about plural marriage, let's eliminate even the place, which would help eliminate the possibility. One other aspect of this is in paragraph 5. where Wilford Woodruff says, "There is nothing in my teachings to the church or in those of my associates during the time specified." We taught this for 30 years, but we have stopped, "which can be reasonably construed to inculcate or encourage polygamy. And when any elder of the church has used language which appeared to convey any such teaching, he has been promptly reproved." Interesting. They're avoiding teaching things that could be reasonably construed, that could appear to convey. They are trying to do this right. This is difficult. This is such a challenging time period. Like I said before, the ending of plural marriage was almost as complicated as the beginning of it. And again, if you're teaching this in gospel doctrine, if you're teaching this in Sunday school, if you're teaching it to your kids at home, yes, it's worth it wrestling with all that history. But to me, one of the powerful lessons that these words on the page are helping us navigate is that principle of avoiding the appearance of evil. I want to be understood and be so clear that I cannot be misunderstood. I'm going to be very cognizant about what I say, but also about what you might hear and how you might interpret it. I'm going to live so far above board that there's no question that I'm not crossing a line or dabbling in evil or doing things that others might find objectionable. To me, there's something incredibly powerful about being willing to live at that kind of level. Whatever others might think evil of you, abstain from it.